Hi, Saskatoon. Well, this is going to be a crash course in a few things, so please pay attention. I used to teach at university, teach labs when I was in university back in the 80s, and I also used to give a lot of lectures in the military. So this is going to be pretty factual and pretty quick because I know you guys all have good things to do with your lives, but it's very important, so please pay attention and let's have a discussion. So Marquis is in the news right now, and so many people are very upset about what's going on there, and the city solicitor is coming out with all these big statements that must be important because she's a lawyer. She would know better, right? So let's take a look at maybe how accurate her statements are and if maybe she's not exactly being forthcoming in everything she's saying. So I'm going to jump around at first here. So my first Marquis isn't Marquis Downs. It's Marquis Drive. And the reason is because the city of Saskatoon breached the zoning bylaw there openly. The zoning bylaw is structured so that it protects public safety because they don't want you in the chemical buffer. So this is the city of Saskatoon map. There's the chemical buffer. These circles by the city themselves, that's the Chief Mr. Bridge. And the city held a grand opening event with the public in attendance while those chemical plants were still operating, which put a whole bunch of people's lives at risk, including the Premier. And they still didn't do anything about it. They've hidden from the fact that they've breached the zoning bylaw, they breached the Planning and Development Act, and they breached the Health and Safety Act. So the province doesn't do anything because they don't like to meddle with the city, and the city just pretends to hide from all these things. So this is the extent of how far the city solicitor will go to protect the zoning bylaw when it suits their purpose, even when it says they're not supposed to do stuff. And just so you understand, this entire red buffer, this is the Chief Mr. Bridge. This entire red buffer here, the dark boundary, is supposed to have no public assembly. So you can ask yourself, was a big public event in the best interest? And was there any safety protocols in place to protect people in case they had minutes to save their life? I don't think so. And these circles that go way over to the east boundary of the riverbank are actually the chemical buffers, which extend 1 kilometer from the chemical plants. Now currently only just the north plant, but still it'll kill you if something really bad were to happen. Very good people work there. Very, very safety conscious, but accidents can happen, and they particularly would like you to be prepared for that. If you live up there, work up there, or just traverse the Chief Mr. Bridge with not even as much as a safety light to protect your life. So let's move on. Okay, so today the city solicitor put out a press release. Really interesting, long read, sounds very technical. She must know what she's saying, right? So the first page, she talks about key points and things about the lease, and that they don't have to pay tax out of Prairieland Park because, well, they're on land that's covered by the Cities Act, all these really important sounding things. Except that this is according to her wording. The lease requires Prairieland Park to obtain the written approval of council prior to the construction of additional development on the land. This provision does not give the city the ability to make business decisions at Prairieland Park. Okay. City council only approves the construction of additional development on the land. Additional development, and only the construction of it. Remember that. Under the bylaw, They take amusement tax, which was $71,000 in 2019. The city then pays that back to Prairieland to allow the corporation to make capital improvements to the property that Prairieland owns. Well, the city of Saskatoon owns the land, so I wish they'd quit saying that because we actually own everything underneath it. And so, but that they're giving them money. According to Mark Regier, the CEO, says they get no money from the city. They take great pride in the fact that they take no money from the city of Saskatoon or the province. Remember that one too. So how could they be getting money all this time? And we don't have to give them this money. So council immediately can start taking this back, because if you're a tax-paying business in this city and you're competing against Prairieland Park, why are we giving them, besides tax-free, they don't pay any property tax and they pay $100 rent on $80-some million property? Why are we giving them even more money? If they can't make a business case out of that, and other businesses are paying property tax, they pay rent, and they don't get any benefit from the city like this, who are they looking out for? The other thing the solicitor talks about is, oh, there's no conflict of interest for councillors to be on the board, except that, hey, they're competing with City of Saskatoon owned facilities like TCU Place, which isn't mentioned in the Cities Act. And they also compete with for-profit tax-paying businesses outside of Prairieland Park. They go head-to-head with them. So a city councillor, whose benefit are they looking out for? Are they looking out for the people that voted for them, who pay their salary? Are they looking out for the city interests in our for-profit places that we have, or even though we're a not-for-profit like TCU Place or Sask Place? So who are they looking out for? There's no conflict? That's all it is a conflict, because they shouldn't be representing somebody that's competing directly against the city of Saskatoon. And it says that they are supposed to be only a tenant and a landlord situation. Well, that's not the case, because they're competing with us. Anyway, let's move on. Okay, so this is what I pulled out of the lease. And I think it's an interesting read if you ever want to, inform yourself directly without taking the city solicitor's word for it. I'd actually encourage you to start reading these things. Approval of the additional development plan. So if you've done anything in the city, if you go to tear down a building, that's part of a whole development plan. You got to do a demolition plan. You got to show that you're going to remediate a bunch of stuff. You got to show your new construction plan. There's supposed to be a master plan for this site. I haven't seen it yet, but there's supposed to be one. And it says additional development and any addition, alteration, or improvement thereto. Well, that can't be right, because the city solicitor says only new construction or construction. But alteration could be demolition. Alteration could be modifying in a great way. That's an improvement. Oh, that opens up a whole big ball of wax that the city council should be approving before anybody does anything. Before they apply for permits, city council has to give their approval in writing for that. So there's pressure to be borne there, isn't there? Restricted uses. They are supposed to be accepted expressly provided in this agreement. Shall not use the exhibition grounds or permit them to be used for any other purpose without limitation. Any other purpose as not provided in this agreement. The agreement is not an implicit approval. There is no zoning approval given in this, and there's none implied. That is a lease agreement between two different parties, but it doesn't say, in fact, it does say that the municipal laws are to be followed. Conduct of activities also are supposed to be reputable. Have they been acting reputably? I don't think so, but you can make your personal choice on that. I just don't think they have been. I'm sure the city solicitor finds them very reputable, in line with what she expects. Observance of laws and regulations. They are not supposed to violate any law or ordinance or any order, rule, regulation, or requirement of any federal, provincial, or municipal government. The bylaw of Saskatoon is a law. It's a municipal law backed by the Planning and Development Act of the province. That is a law. This does not give them the right to supersede that. And there is no implicit approval given by having a lease with them. So the cities, this whole talk about the Cities Act and that there's a lease and that the uses in the lease are broad, yeah, but the zoning bylaw is not. So quit playing games, because you're just trying to avoid the obvious. No relationship except landlord and tenant. Well, if you got a councillor on the board and they're competing head-on with the city, so then what's that arrangement? And then the taxpayers pay tax, so those businesses are competing head-on with what you're supporting or promoting. So is there not a conflict, perceived at least? I don't know, Miss Solicitor, I think maybe you should refrain and give something different on this answer, because it's not just a financial implication here, because the city of Saskatoon loses money to them. So then if the city councillor is voting on these issues and they're present for board meetings, whose best interests are they acting in? And if they're voting on behalf of Prairieland Park, we should know that. That's why I think they should have been abstaining this whole time. In case Miss Lowen's not paying attention, I mean you now. Anyway, let's carry on. So this is from the solicitor's own report from years ago yet. And it's very interesting because their strategic goal is this report supports the city's strategic goal of asset and financial sustainability by ensuring the long-term viability of Prairieland Park. They forgot to say at the detriment of tax-paying businesses outside of Prairieland Park and at the detriment of our own civic facilities that they're now going to compete against. But that was never originally their mandate. So they've exceeded their mandate greatly because they don't just hold events for 1,500 people like Chris Gulka drops in his press release. And if they did, I wouldn't complain. It's because they're holding events for 10 and 12 and 15 and 20 people and weddings for 50 and 100, competing with hotels and halls and legions. And they have no problem with that because they've been sliding in to do that. And they've hidden from the fact that they've been getting away with it. Now they're not hiding. You want to go back to holding events for 1,500 people that nobody else can hold? I won't complain, but only stay at 1,500. Enough of this crap that you've been playing up until now. So one of the things that they talk about is Sports on Tap is a building included, and that it's excluded because of the ag zoning, but it's through the Cities Act. So it doesn't matter what it's zoned, it's on city property, and they're just excluded from this, except that we don't have to give them a business license because they're operating a bar, and they're operating a lounge, and they're operating a restaurant, and they're doing betting on there, and we haven't approved any of that. There's no change of use from a casino back in the day of the Emerald Casino. So everything that's taken place since then hasn't been approved officially. Just because the city gives a building permit, they're never liable for mistakes they've made. So they've made mistakes, and they need to own it. And now either these guys get the zoning rechanged or they quit operating in the businesses that exceed the zoning bylaw. That's a simple way to do it. And not the way the city solicitor thinks, oh, it's okay. I mean, nobody died up on the bridge, so that's good with that zoning. And this, we can overlook this in no time because I'll just give some really fancy wording and nobody will pay attention. Except hopefully you will pay attention because this is serious and this is indicative of how the city's becoming to operate. Just ignore things when it's in their best interest, and when it's not, they hold somebody to firm account. A small business, a person trying to change their use of their business, oh, you should hear about the problems people have. So maybe the solicitor should understand that or care about that more than they care about these people right now. This bylaw, this $71,000, I'd like to see that stop being given to Prairieland Park because we have no obligation to do it. And I think that since they're competing against us and competing against our businesses that are on our side, I think that we can afford to hold that money back, and we're under no obligation to give it to them every year. And Mark Regier, since he doesn't claim he's getting it anyway, he won't miss it because he hasn't announced that he's been getting it in the first place. Chris Gulka put out this letter today that I got a copy of. Thought that was really interesting of him. And how he talks about all these big events and that they're the only event capable of holding 1,500 people for a sit down. Yep, because you've got a banquet kitchen, which isn't allowed in a ag zoned area, according to the zoning bylaw that I've read. And but if you were to just stick to that and you were to bring in catering, I wouldn't have a complaint. Except that's not what you're doing, is it? How about the weddings for 100 people that you go? You don't want to talk about that. It's interesting. Chris Gulka, he's made this whole big thing about don't look here, everything's good, just like the city solicitor did at the same time. Just these two things came out. It's interesting because one thing you don't realize, Chris, is that ag people don't screw other ag people. So once this catches on that you've been playing games here and that you've been doing so on purpose, I think that you might find your world's going to change. And I think when you guys made the application through the city of Saskatoon that you needed $10 million from the provincial government and federal government to expand more of your events, have more trade show events, which means more halls for a 4-day crop production show, 1 day of setup, 4 days of event, right? And so the rest of the 360 days of the year that you actually run weddings, oh, no, that's not why we're doing it. So you didn't mention that when you were going for funding. And the city went, oh, okay, yeah, it's for ag. Yeah, for sure, we're going to back you. Luckily, you didn't get the money. Otherwise, you'd be competing even further with businesses, wouldn't you? Because that's your goal. And you just don't care. The Sutherland Hotel, the Concordia Club, the Odeon. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Buds on Broadway, you'll compete with anybody for anything, and you'll keep using it under the guise that it's for the greater good. It's only for the greater good if you exceed the limits of business outside that isn't handling something. So hotels, halls that can't handle certain scales of things, and you take on stuff beyond that, then you're in the greater good. But once it's now you've stepped into that zone way below that, you're going head to head with all of our businesses, aren't you? Every hotel in the city you're going to with. You're going against Sask Place or Sastel Center and Credit Union Place, right? Or you don't want to talk about that? I mean, if you want to write another letter, please let me know. So let's wind up with just a basic look at the City of Saskatoon ag zoning. And I would encourage you to actually read it, because, you know, we all talk about, oh, it must mean something really important. Well, if no public assembly up at the bridge isn't enough to protect people's lives, this is just, don't even pay attention. It's only worth whatever it's written on if it was a bar napkin, right? Except let's read what it says. Permitted uses. So you got to have a permitted use. If it's not permitted, then you shouldn't be in there, right? 1-unit dwellings, 2-unit dwellings, agricultural uses, market gardens, nurseries, greenhouses, zoos, equestrian centers, outdoor recreation uses, parks and playfields. It does not say professional, for-profit, commercial recreational teams. Let's be clear, it does not say that. It's talking about soccer fields and things that the general people of the city can enjoy, or amateur sport. You're talking about professional sport, and you're going to hide under a tax-free status. That's the game you're playing. Public parks, golf courses and driving ranges, horse and dog tracks, radio and television transmitter and receivers, cemeteries and crematoria, airports, railway stations, yards and facilities, hospitals, education institutions, places of worship, fairgrounds, boarding and breeding kennels, animal hospitals, funeral homes in conjunction with a cemetery, and accessory buildings and uses. Accessory is secondary to the primary use. So if you want to open your mouth about what those main uses are for your banquet facility, then tell me what the primary use is, because that's where you're making all your money, and that's the main activities go on for 360 days of the year, or 365. Prohibited uses, things that you're not allowed to do. Intensive livestock operations is one. Permanent midways, anything permanent like that. Oh no. Discretionary use, things where the city planning department has the discretion to approve, or council can. Child care centers and preschools, campgrounds, agricultural research stations, and parking stations. It does not say bar, tavern, restaurant, banquet facility, catering facility. Should I name more? So all of these uses that the solicitor wants to say that we're not aware of, or, you know, we haven't looked into this, or we haven't found any, and we're not intending to look any further. Yeah, I know you're not intending to do anything. I have no problem understanding that part of it. I have a problem that you don't think that we're not going to keep pushing pressure on you or counselors until you actually find the way to start looking at these things. And you can squeeze Prairieland Park. And you can rewrite the lease agreement, because they are going to need to rezone to do what they're doing. And if you rezone, you could get grants in lieu instead of taxes, because you'll be rewriting the whole lease agreement. Or they can go back to running 1,500 or more people only in events, or they go back to just the pure ag things that they used to do about 2007, 2006, before they tore down the Jubilee Hall. How about they go back to that? That's where they started from, and this is what they've twisted to. So how about you stand up for us for a change? And as I point to me, I'm not any more ag anymore. I grew up on a farm and between the city and the farm, but lots of ag people are being hurt by this, and I'm really not happy with that, especially with the arrogant attitude of some of these people with Prairieland Park. So if you're on city council, you better start paying attention. Troy Davies, enough hiding. You can go back to hiding because you didn't present anything today at council. Bev Dubois, thank you very much for asking honest questions. Marin Lowen, I don't know what you were doing today. It seems like you're setting things up to drop a bomb on Marquis Downs, because I don't know that your comments were actually meant to be helpful other than hurtful. But maybe you could find a way to start being helpful, because people are counting on you as well. It's not a game about, well, you get soccer or this. The best location for soccer at Marquis Downs is the grandstand. The second best location is Sports on Tap. If you want to debate it with me, go ahead. And who's going to replace all the lead water lines into Marquis Downs? If you're going to run a public event out of there, you're going to have to upgrade that. Are we paying for that as a taxpayer, or are they going to pay that huge cost to dig all that up and replace it? Because they're supposed to be responsible for their own costs of alteration. And I just want to set the record straight that if we're doing this, they're paying for it. Anyway, please get involved. Again, farmers and ag people don't screw other ag people. And so people that don't understand that, you might start to learn. Thank you.